The rain hammered against the windshield of Emma Chen's ancient Honda Civic as she raced through the empty streets of downtown Chicago. Her heart pounded against her ribs like a trapped bird, and her grandmother's weak voice still echoed in her ears from the phone call that had shattered her peaceful evening. "Emma, dear, I think I'm having another episode. The chest pain is getting worse." At 24, Emma had learned to expect the unexpected. But nothing had prepared her for the terror that gripped her when Grandmother Rose called from their small apartment at midnight. The woman who had raised her since she was 8 years old, who had sacrificed everything to put Emma through art school, was in trouble. The art student's desperate drive, Emma's pain-stained fingers gripped the steering wheel tighter as she navigated the slick streets. Her part-time job at the campus coffee shop barely covered tuition, let alone a reliable car. The Honda's brakes had been making strange noises for weeks, but repairs were a luxury she couldn't afford. Tonight, those delayed repairs would change her life forever. The red light at the intersection of Michigan Avenue seemed to last an eternity. Emma checked her phone for the third time in 2 minutes. No new messages from Rose. The silence was more terrifying than any emergency alert could have been. When the light finally turned green, Emma pressed the accelerator, her mind focused entirely on reaching Mercy General Hospital. She didn't see the sleek black Lamborghini until it was too late. When luxury meets desperation, the collision sent both vehicles spinning in a symphony of screeching metal and shattered glass. Emma's airbag deployed, filling her small car with the smell of chemicals and dust. For a moment, the world went silent, except for the steady patter of rain on broken glass. Then reality crashed back harder than the impact itself. "Oh no, oh no, oh no," Emma whispered, frantically checking herself for injuries. A small cut on her forehead was bleeding, but nothing seemed broken. Her car, however, was another story entirely. From the wreckage of what appeared to be an extremely expensive sports car emerged a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair plastered to his head by the rain, wore a suit that probably cost more than Emma's entire wardrobe. Sebastian Blackwood stood in the rain, staring at his destroyed Lamborghini with an expression that mixed disbelief with something that might have been amusement. At 31, he had built a technology empire that revolutionized smartphone security. He owned 5 cars worth more than most people's houses. But this particular Lamborghini had been his favorite. The billionaire's unexpected reaction, "Are you hurt?" Sebastian called out, his voice cutting through the rain as he approached Emma's car. Emma stumbled out of her Honda, her legs shaky from adrenaline. "I'm so sorry. I'm so incredibly sorry. My grandmother is in the hospital, and I was rushing, and my brakes have been acting up, and I know your car probably costs more than I'll make in 10 years, and I don't have insurance that covers this kind of damage." "And breathe," Sebastian interrupted, his tone surprisingly gentle. "Just breathe for a second." It's up close. Emma could see that his eyes were a startling shade of green. And despite the circumstances, there was kindness in them. She had expected anger, threats, maybe even lawsuits. Instead, he was looking at her with genuine concern. "Your grandmother?" Sebastian asked, glancing at the smoldering remains of both vehicles. "Heart problems. She called 20 minutes ago. I was trying to get to Mercy General." Emma's voice cracked. "And now I've destroyed your car, and I still need to get to her, and I don't know what to do." Sebastian studied her face for a moment, taking in the genuine panic and desperation. In his world of calculated business deals and carefully orchestrated social interactions, raw emotion was rare. Most people who encountered him wanted something. This woman clearly wanted nothing more than to reach her sick grandmother. An unexpected offer. "Come on," Sebastian said, pulling out his phone. "I'll call my driver. I can't ask you to do that. I just crashed into your car. You should be calling the police and your insurance company and probably your lawyer." "Probably," Sebastian agreed, "but your grandmother is more important than paperwork right now." Within minutes, a black town car pulled up to the intersection. Sebastian helped Emma gather her purse and keys, then guided her into the warm, dry interior of the luxury vehicle. "Mercy General?" Quickly, Sebastian instructed the driver before turning to Emma. "I'm Sebastian, by the way. Sebastian Blackwood. Emma. Chen. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, leaving a small streak of paint from her earlier art session. And I really am sorry about your car. Cars can be replaced. Grandmothers can't. Racing against time, the drive to the hospital took only 12 minutes, but it felt like hours to Emma. Sebastian sat quietly beside her, occasionally glancing at his phone but not making any calls. She expected him to be arranging for lawyers, or dealing with insurance claims, but instead he seemed focused on ensuring she got to her destination safely. "You don't have to come in," Emma said, as they pulled up to the emergency entrance. "You've already done more than enough." "I'll wait until you know she's okay," Sebastian replied simply. Emma stared at him in disbelief. "You're going to wait? In a hospital? For someone you've never met?" I'm going to wait." The automatic doors of Mercy General slid open, and Emma rushed to the reception desk. After what felt like an eternity of forms and questions, a nurse finally led her to room 314, where grandmother Rose lay connected to various monitors, looking smaller and more fragile than Emma had ever seen her. "Emma, dear," Rose whispered, her voice weak but steady. "You came so quickly." "Of course I came. How are you feeling?" Emma took her grandmother's hand, careful not to disturb the foreline. "Better, now that you're here." "The doctors say it was just angina, not another heart attack. They want to keep me overnight for observation, but I should be able to go home tomorrow." Relief flooded through Emma like a dam bursting. "Thank goodness. I was so scared." "You look like you've been through something yourself," Rose observed, noticing the small cut on Emma's forehead and her disheveled appearance. The grandmother's wisdom Ma explained about the accident. It's about the mysterious billionaire who had helped her get to the hospital, about the expensive car she had destroyed, and the debt she couldn't possibly repay. "This man, Sebastian," Rose said thoughtfully. "He's still here?" "He said he'd wait until I knew you were okay." Rose smiled. The same knowing smile she'd worn when Emma was a child and had tried to hide broken treasures behind her back. "Bring him to me, Grandma. He's probably gone by now. Important men like him don't wait around in hospital waiting rooms." But when Emma returned to the main floor, Sebastian was exactly where she had left him, reading emails on his phone and nursing. A cup of what appeared to be truly terrible hospital coffee. "She's okay," Emma announced, and she saw genuine relief cross his features. "Good. I'm glad. She wants to meet you." Sebastian looked surprised. "Are you sure?" "She's very insistent. Grandmother Rose doesn't take no for an answer." A meeting of Hearts Room 314 felt different when Sebastian entered. His presence somehow made the sterile hospital environment feel warmer, more human. Rose studied him with the sharp eyes of someone who had lived through 8 decades and learned to read people quickly. "So you're the young man who helped my granddaughter," Rose said, extending a surprisingly firm handshake. "It was nothing, Mrs. Chen. Anyone would have done the same." "No," Rose said firmly, "they wouldn't have. Most people would have been angry about their car. Most people would have demanded insurance information and called lawyers. You called your driver instead." Sebastian shifted uncomfortably under her direct gaze. "Your granddaughter was in distress." "The car didn't seem important. It was a very expensive car," Emma interjected. "I looked it up on my phone. A Lamborghini Huracan. Base price starts at over $200,000. Money's just numbers." "On a screen," Sebastian said quietly, "family is real." Rose squeezed his hand. "Emma, I like this one." The debt that binds his visiting hours came to an end. Emma walked Sebastian back to the hospital entrance. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the streetlights like a scene from one of her paintings. "About your car," Emma began, but Sebastian held up a hand. "We'll figure something out. Don't worry about it tonight." "I have to." "Worry about it. I don't have $200,000. I don't have $2,000. I work part-time at a coffee shop and I'm barely keeping up with art school tuition." Sebastian stopped walking and turned to face her fully. "Your major?" "Fine arts, with a focus on painting." I know it's impractical, and I'll probably never make enough money to pay you back. But it's what I love, and Grandmother Rose always said, to follow your dreams, even when they don't make financial sense." "Smart woman, your grandmother." Smartest. But that doesn't solve the problem of your car. Sebastian was quiet for a long moment, and Emma could almost see the gears turning in his mind. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful, almost hesitant. What if I told you there might be another way to handle this? What do you mean? I mean, what if the debt didn't have to be financial? Emma stared at him, confusion clear on her face. I don't understand. Sebastian smiled, and for the first time that night, he looked uncertain, almost vulnerable. I have a proposition for you, Emma Chen. One that might benefit both of us. The words hung in the air between them like a promise and a question all at once. Emma's heart began to race again, but this time, it wasn't from fear or adrenaline. This time, it was from the sudden, impossible hope that maybe, just maybe, the worst night of her life was about to become something entirely different. As Sebastian's driver pulled up to take him home, Emma stood on the hospital steps, watching the taillights disappear into the Chicago night. She had no idea what proposition awaited her, but she knew with certainty that her life had just taken a turn she never could have imagined. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tonight, she was still just Emma Chen, art student and devoted granddaughter. But tomorrow, she would discover what it meant to capture the attention of Sebastian Blackwood, and what price he might ask for forgiveness. The city sparkled around her like scattered diamonds, full of possibility and mystery. Somewhere in those glittering towers, Sebastian was probably already planning their next meeting. And despite her exhaustion, despite her worry, despite the impossible debt hanging over her head, Emma found herself looking forward to discovering what came next. After all, the best stories always began with the most unexpected collisions. Emma woke up in the uncomfortable hospital chair beside her grandmother's bed. Her neck stiff, and her mind immediately flooded with memories of the previous night. The accident, the destroyed Lamborghini, and most vividly, Sebastian Blackwood's mysterious proposition echoed in her thoughts like an unfinished symphony. Grandmother Rose was already awake, sipping hospital coffee and watching the morning news. With the volume turned low, her color had returned, and the monitors showed steady, reassuring rhythms. "Good morning, Sleeping Beauty," Rose whispered, smiling at Emma's disheveled appearance. "You look like you wrestled with your dreams all night." Something like that. Emma stretched, wincing at the protest from her muscles. "How are you feeling?" "Much better. The doctor says I can go home this afternoon if my tests come back normal." Rose studied her granddaughter's face. "But I'm more interested in hearing about your billionaire friend. Have you heard from him?" As if summoned by her words, Emma's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Good morning, Emma. I hope your grandmother is feeling better. Would you be available to meet for coffee this afternoon to discuss our arrangement?" Sebastian showed the message to Rose, who raised her eyebrows with obvious interest. "Our arrangement?" Rose read aloud. "That sounds intriguing. It sounds terrifying," Emma corrected. "What kind of arrangement could a billionaire possibly want with someone like me? There's only one way to find out, dear. It's the coffee shop revelation 3. Hours later, Emma found herself sitting in an upscale coffee shop in downtown Chicago, nervously fidgeting with her paint-stained sweater. She had chosen her best jeans and only clean blouse, but she still felt underdressed for whatever this meeting might bring. Sebastian arrived precisely on time, looking effortlessly elegant in a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than Emma's rent for 6 months. But when he smiled at her, the intimidating businessman facade melted away, revealing the same kind man who had helped her the night before. "How's your grandmother?" he asked, settling into the chair across from her. "Better, thank you. She's being discharged this afternoon." Emma wrapped her hands around her coffee cup for warmth and courage. "She asked me to thank you again for your kindness." "She doesn't need to thank me." Sebastian paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "Emma, I want to be completely honest with you about something. Last night wasn't entirely accidental." Emma's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "I've been struggling with a problem for months. The meeting you made me realize there might be a solution that could help both of us. The billionaires." Dilemma Sebastian leaned forward, his green eyes serious and intent. 3 months ago, my company went public. Since then, I've been under constant scrutiny from investors, media, and people who want to use my success for their own gain. Every woman I meet seems more interested in my bank account than in me as a person. Emma listened, trying to understand where this conversation was heading. My board of directors has been pressuring me to settle down, to present a more stable, family-oriented image for the company. They believe it will inspire more confidence in our long-term vision. Sebastian ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that made him seem younger and more vulnerable. The problem is, I don't trust anyone's motives anymore. I still don't understand. What this has to do with me, Emma said carefully. You're the first person in years who has treated me like a normal human being. You crashed into my car and your first concern was getting to your sick grandmother. You didn't ask for my money or try to network with me. You just needed help, and I was able to provide it. Sebastian pulled out a leather portfolio and placed it on the table between them. I have a proposition instead of repaying the money. For my car, I'd like you to consider entering into a temporary arrangement with me. The contract of Hartsema stared at the portfolio as if it might explode. What kind of arrangement? A contract relationship? You would accompany me to business events, charity galas, and social functions as my girlfriend? In return, I would pay off your student loans, cover your grandmother's medical expenses, provide you with a monthly allowance that would allow you to focus on your art without worrying about basic necessities. The words hung in the air like a surreal dream. Emma blinked several times, certain she had misheard. You want to pay me to pretend to be your girlfriend? Want to pay you to be yourself in public with me? No pretending required. Just be the genuine, caring person you showed me last night. Emma opened the portfolio with trembling fingers. The contract was professionally typed and surprisingly detailed. The financial terms made her head spin. The amount Sebastian was offering would not only eliminate her debts, but provide security she had never imagined possible. This is insane, she whispered. Is it? Think about it logically. You get financial stability and the freedom to pursue your passion. I get a companion who I actually enjoy spending time with. Someone who won't use me for personal gain because you'll already be fairly compensated for your time. But it's not real. Sebastian's expression softened. Who's to say what's real? We'll be spending time together, getting to know each other, sharing experiences. The only difference is that we'll both know exactly what we're getting into from the beginning. The grandmother's prospective Emma took the contract home to discuss with Rose, who read through it with the careful attention of someone who had spent 40 years working as a legal secretary before retirement. The terms are surprisingly fair, Rose observed. He's not asking for anything inappropriate. No living arrangements, no physical obligations beyond what you might expect from normal dating. He's even included clauses protecting your rights and privacy. But Grandma, it feels like I'd be selling myself. Or maybe you'd be buying yourself freedom. Rose set the contract aside and took Emma's hands. Sweetheart, I've watched you struggle. For years. You work 30 hours a week just to afford tuition, and you still can't pay for proper art supplies. When was the last time you created something just because you wanted to, without worrying about whether you could afford the canvas? Emma couldn't remember. Every piece she painted was calculated based on available materials and time constraints. This young man is offering you a chance to discover what you're truly capable of as an artist. Yes, it's unconventional, but sometimes the best opportunities come in unexpected packages. What if I fall for him? What if he falls for me? What happens when the contract ends? Rose smiled, the knowing smile that had guided Emma through countless childhood dilemmas. Then you'll deal with that when it happens. But you can't let fear of what might go wrong prevent you from discovering what might go right. The decision that evening, Emma called Sebastian from her tiny apartment, surrounded by half-finished paintings and empty ramen containers. I have some conditions, she said without preamble. I'm listening. First, my grandmother can never know this is a business. Arrangement. As far as she's concerned, we're dating normally. Agreed. Second, I want to continue working at the coffee shop, at least part-time. I don't want to become completely dependent on you. It's fine. Though I'm not sure why you'd want to keep working when you don't have to, because I need to maintain some sense of who I am outside of this arrangement. Fair enough. Any other conditions? Emma took a deep breath. I want the right to end this at any time, for any reason, without penalty. already included in Clause 15, and I accept. The words felt strange leaving her lips, as if she were agreeing to jump out of an airplane without being entirely sure her parachute would work. Excellent. We'll start with a charity gala this Saturday night. I'll send a car to pick you up at 7. Sebastian, Emma hesitated. What if I embarrass you? I've never been to a charity gala. I don't know how. To act around wealthy people. Be yourself, Emma. That's all I'm asking for. The next 3 days passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Sebastian had arranged for a personal shopper to help Emma select appropriate clothing for various events. A gesture that felt both thoughtful and overwhelming, standing in the boutique, surrounded by dresses that cost more than her monthly rent. Emma felt like Alice tumbling down the rabbit hole into a world she didn't understand. The key, explained the personal shopper, an elegant woman named Patricia, is to choose pieces that make you feel confident while remaining true to your personal style. Emma found herself drawn to a midnight blue dress that reminded her of the sky in her favorite painting. It was simple but elegant, with clean lines that flattered her figure without being overly formal. Perfect choice, Patricia approved. Classic, but not boring. Sophisticated, but not pretentious. As Emma looked at herself in the fitting room mirror, she hardly recognized the woman staring back. The dress transformed her from struggling art student into someone who looked like she belonged in Sebastian's world. But the question remained, did she want to belong there? The first event, Saturday evening, arrived with unseasonable warmth for Chicago in late autumn. Emma stood in front of her mirror, adjusting the midnight blue dress for the 100th time. When her phone buzzed with a text from Sebastian. Car is downstairs. You're going to be amazing tonight. The ride to the Palmer House Hotel felt like traveling to another planet. The charity gala was for childhood literacy. Hosted in the grand ballroom that glittered with crystal chandeliers and flower arrangements that probably cost more than Emma's car had been worth, Sebastian met her at the entrance, and the sight of him in a perfectly tailored tuxedo temporarily stole her breath. But it was the genuine warmth in his smile that calmed her nerves. You look stunning, he said, offering his arm. I feel like I'm wearing a costume. Then you're wearing it perfectly. The evening unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance. Sebastian introduced Emma to dozens of Chicago's elite, and she found herself surprised by how naturally conversation flowed. These people, despite their wealth and status, were simply human beings with interests and passions and stories to tell. You're a natural at this, Sebastian murmured, during a brief moment alone. I'm terrified I'm going to spill something on someone important. Everyone here has spilled something on someone important at least once. It's practically a rite of passage. Unexpected encounter. Their peaceful evening was interrupted when a stunning blonde woman in a dress that probably cost more than Emma's education approached their table. Sebastian, darling, the woman purred, her voice carrying just a hint of calculation beneath its sweetness. I heard through the grapevine that you'd brought someone new tonight. Sebastian's entire demeanor shifted, his relaxed posture becoming rigid with tension. Victoria, didn't realize you'd be here. Daddy's company is one of the sponsors. You remember my father, don't you, Harrison Sterling? Victoria's smile was perfectly polished and completely cold. And you must be the new girlfriend I've been hearing whispers about? Emma felt immediately outclassed. Victoria Sterling radiated the kind of effortless sophistication that money and breeding provided, making Emma acutely aware of her own humble background. Emma Chen, she replied, extending her hand politely. How lovely, and what is it you do, Emma? I'm an art student. How creative. Victoria's tone suggested that creativity was slightly distasteful. Sebastian has always been drawn to artistic types, though usually not for very long. The barb hit its target, and Emma felt heat rise to her cheeks. Before she could respond, Sebastian placed a protective hand on her lower back. If you'll excuse us, Victoria, Emma and I were just leaving. Of course. It was lovely meeting you, Emma. I'm sure we'll be seeing much more of each other. As they walked away, Emma could feel Victoria's eyes boring into her back like lasers. Ex-girlfriend? Emma asked once they were out of earshot. Something like that? Sebastian's jaw was tight with suppressed anger. Victoria and I dated briefly about 2 years ago. She had very specific ideas about what our relationship should look like, most of which involved my bank account. She's beautiful. She's a viper in designer clothing. Despite Sebastian's dismissive words, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that Victoria Sterling represented everything she was not: polished, sophisticated, and completely at home in Sebastian's world. The thought followed her home that night, planting seeds of doubt that would soon grow into something much more dangerous. Growing complications. Over the next 2 weeks, Emma and Sebastian fell into a comfortable routine. Public appearances twice a week, always professional, but increasingly natural. Emma found herself genuinely enjoying Sebastian's company, appreciating his dry humor and unexpected kindness. But the more time they spent together, the more difficult it became to remember that their relationship was purely business. Sebastian, meanwhile, was discovering that his convenient arrangement was becoming inconveniently complicated. Emma's genuine reactions to his world, her obvious care for others, and her complete lack of interest in his wealth were dangerously attractive qualities. The wake-up call came during their 3rd week together, at a museum opening where Sebastian caught himself watching Emma study a painting with the same intensity she brought to everything that mattered to her. "It's beautiful," she whispered, standing before a landscape that seemed to glow with inner light. "You're beautiful," Sebastian replied without thinking, and then immediately realized what he had said. Emma turned to look at him, her eyes wide with surprise and something that might have been hope. For a moment, they stood frozen in that space between pretense and reality, between contractual obligation and genuine feeling. Then Sebastian's phone rang, shattering the moment like glass. "I should take this," he said, stepping away with obvious relief. Emma remained in front of the painting, but she was no longer seeing the brush strokes and colors. Instead, she was seeing the growing complexity of her own emotions and the dangerous territory they were entering. Neither of them noticed Victoria Sterling watching from across the gallery, her perfectly manicured fingers already reaching for her phone to make a call that would change everything. The contract that had seemed so clear and simple was about to become the most complicated relationship either of them had ever experienced. And the real test was only just beginning. Emma stared at her phone screen in disbelief, reading the gossip article for the 3rd time. The headline blazed across the entertainment website like an accusation: "Tech billionaire Sebastian Blackwood's secret contract girlfriend exposed." The article contained details that made her blood run cold: her financial struggles, her grandmother's medical bills, even quotes from anonymous sources claiming the entire relationship was a calculated business arrangement designed to improve Sebastian's public image. Sources close to the situation reveal that Ms. Chen was specifically chosen for her authentic, down-to-earth appeal and has been receiving substantial monthly payments in exchange for accompanying Blackwood to public events. Emma's hands trembled as she scrolled through the comments section. Strangers dissected her motives and character with brutal efficiency. Gold digger much. "At least she's honest about being bought and paid for. Poor Sebastian. Seems like such a nice guy." Her phone rang, and Sebastian's name appeared on the screen. Emma stared at it for several rings before answering. "Emma, I just saw the article. I'm so sorry. My security team is investigating how this information leaked, and my lawyers are already working on getting it taken down." "Too late for that," Emma said quietly. "It's already been shared thousands of times. We'll get through this. It will blow over in a few days, will it?" Emma's voice cracked. "Sebastian, they know everything. About the money, about my grandmother, about the contract. One with access to very private information did this." Cold silence fell between them as the implications sank in. "You think it was someone close to me?" Sebastian said finally. "I think it was someone who wanted to hurt both of us." Victoria's game revealed while Emma was discovering the article. Victoria Sterling sat in her penthouse apartment, sipping champagne and admiring her handiwork. The private investigator she had hired had been thorough. The journalist she had fed the story to had crafted it perfectly. Victoria's phone rang, and she smiled when she saw Sebastian's name. "Sebastian, darling, just heard about that awful article. How terrible for you. Cut the act, Victoria. I know you're behind this. I'm sure I don't know what you mean, though I did try to warn you about getting involved with someone so obviously inappropriate. You hired someone to investigate Emma? You leaked private financial information? You violated her privacy and mine?" Victoria's laughter was crystalline and cold. I protected you from making a fool of yourself. Can you imagine what the board would think if they knew you were paying some little nobody to pretend to love you? The board already knows about the arrangement. I cleared it with them from the beginning. The admission caught Victoria off guard, but she recovered quickly. How wonderfully honest of you. I'm sure they'll be thrilled to know their CEO needs to purchase companionship. At least I'm honest about my relationships. Victoria. Unlike some people who pretend to care while calculating exactly how much they can extract. We could have been perfect together, Sebastian. We understood each other's world, each other's expectations. This little artist will never be anything. More than a charity case, you dress up for parties. Psst. Sebastian's voice was deadly quiet. Emma is worth 100 of you, Victoria. And if you ever come near her again, you'll discover exactly how ruthless I can be when someone threatens people I care about. The line went dead, leaving Victoria staring at her phone with a mixture of rage and disbelief. She had expected Sebastian to be grateful for her intervention, to realize that Emma was just a temporary distraction. Instead, he had chosen to defend the woman who was clearly beneath him. But Victoria Sterling didn't become one of Chicago's most influential socialites by accepting defeat gracefully. If Sebastian wanted to play for keeps, she would show him exactly what that meant. The confrontation found Sebastian waiting outside her apartment building that evening, looking haggard and exhausted. The confident billionaire had been replaced by a man who seemed to be carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. "Can we talk?" he asked simply. They walked to the small park near Emma's building, where they had shared coffee and conversation during their first real date weeks earlier. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. "I've been thinking about what you said," Sebastian began. "About someone close to me being responsible for the leak. And you're right. Only a handful of people knew the specific details about our arrangement. My assistant, my lawyers, my security team, and in Victoria." Sebastian nodded grimly. "I should have seen this coming. Victoria doesn't accept rejection gracefully." Emma sat down on a bench, suddenly feeling exhausted. "The article makes me sound like a prostitute with a college degree. Anyone who knows you would never believe that. But they don't know me, Sebastian. All they see is a poor art student who somehow convinced a billionaire to pay her bills. And honestly," Emma looked up at him with tears in her eyes, "they're not entirely wrong. Don't say that. Why not? It's true, isn't it? I accepted money from you in exchange for playing a role. How is that different from what they're saying?" Sebastian sat beside her, careful to maintain some distance. "It's different because it was honest. We both knew exactly what we were agreeing to. There was no deception, no manipulation, wasn't there?" Emma's voice was barely a whisper, because somewhere along the way, I forgot this was supposed to be business. The admission hung between them like a bridge. Neither was sure they should cross. "Emma, no. Let me finish. I fell for you, Sebastian. Despite the contract, despite knowing better, despite all the reasons why this could never work. And the worst part is, I think you might have feelings for me too." Sebastian was quiet for so long that Emma began to think she had misread everything. "I fired my assistant today," he said finally. "What? James Parker? He's worked for me for 5 years, and I trusted him completely. But the leak had to come from someone with administrative access to my personal files." Emma stared at him. "You think James gave Victoria the information?" "I think Victoria paid him to give her the information. James has been struggling financially since his wife's cancer diagnosis. Victoria would have known exactly how to exploit that vulnerability. That's horrible. It's business as usual for Victoria Sterling." Sebastian turned to face Emma fully. "But you're right about something else. I do have feelings for you. Real feelings that have nothing to do with contracts, or arrangements, or public relations." The detective's discovery is known to both Sebastian and Emma. Detective Morgan Walsh was conducting her own investigation into the leak. A longtime friend of Rose Chen from their neighborhood book club, Morgan had taken a personal interest in the case when Rose asked for her help. "There's definitely something fishy here," Morgan told Rose over coffee in the hospital cafeteria, where Rose was visiting another friend. "The level of detail in that article required access to protected financial information. That's a crime. Can you prove it? I'm working on it. But Emma and Sebastian need to know they're dealing with someone who's willing to break the law to get what she wants. Morgan's investigation had uncovered a pattern of behavior that painted Victoria Sterling in an increasingly dark light.
Bribes.
To journalists, harassment of Sebastian's previous romantic interests, and a network of private investigators who specialized in digging up damaging information. This woman is dangerous, Morgan continued. She's not just a jealous ex-girlfriend. She's someone who believes she's entitled to Sebastian Blackwood, and she'll destroy anyone who gets in her way. The revelation of the breakthrough came from an unexpected source. James Parker, racked with guilt over his betrayal, contacted Sebastian's legal team with evidence of Victoria's scheme. The recorded phone conversations were damning. Victoria clearly outlining her plan to destroy Emma's reputation, promising James enough money to cover his wife's medical bills, explicitly stating her intention to force Sebastian back into a relationship with her. She made it sound like she was protecting you, James explained during his confession. She said Emma was just using you for money and that exposing the truth would save you from being hurt. Sebastian listened to the recordings with a mixture of rage and sadness. James had been a trusted employee and friend, but desperation had made him vulnerable to Victoria's manipulation. Prepared to testify against her, James continued. I know I can't undo the damage, but maybe I can help you prove what really happened. Thank you, Sebastian said quietly. And James? Your wife's medical bills will be covered regardless. That was never conditional on your employment. The public response, armed with evidence of Victoria's scheme, Sebastian's legal team launched a comprehensive response. The recordings were released to the media, along with a detailed explanation of how the false information had been obtained and distributed. The public reaction was swift and decisive. Victoria Sterling, who had built her reputation on social connections and carefully cultivated image, found herself at the center of a scandal that made Emma's brief notoriety look insignificant. Chicago socialite exposed an elaborate blackmail scheme. Victoria Sterling? The real gold digger? How far will a scorned woman go? But for Emma, the vindication felt hollow. The damage had been done. Not just to her reputation, but to the fragile trust she and Sebastian had been building. The choice Sebastian found Emma in her art studio, small converted garage space she rented near the university. She was working on a painting with fierce concentration, her movements sharp and angry as she applied paint to canvas. It's beautiful, he said, studying the work in progress. The painting depicted a storm over a city, with lightning illuminating skyscrapers. Against a turbulent sky. It's angry, Emma corrected, without looking up. I've been angry a lot lately. You have every right to be angry. Victoria violated your privacy, damaged your reputation, and used your personal struggles as weapons against you. I'm not angry. At Victoria, Emma finally turned to face him. I'm angry at myself. Why? Because I let this happen. I signed that contract knowing it would complicate everything. And I stayed in the arrangement even after I realized I was falling for you. Sebastian stepped closer, careful not to disturb her workspace. What if I told you the contract doesn't matter anymore? What do you mean? What if we forget about business arrangements and financial obligations and just focus on what we both know is real? Emma set down her brush, her hands shaking slightly. What's real, Sebastian? This is real? He gestured to the space between them. The way you challenge me to be better than I thought I could be, the way you see possibilities in people that they don't see in themselves, the way you make me want to build something beautiful instead of just profitable. And what about the money? The debt? Your destroyed car. Forget the car. Forget the debt. Forget everything except this. I love you, Emma Chun. Not because of any contract or arrangement, but because you're the most genuine, courageous, and beautiful person I've ever met. Emma felt tears streaming down her face before she realized she was crying. I love you too. I've loved you since that first night when you helped me get to Grandmother Rose instead of calling your lawyers. Then we'll figure out the rest as we go. 6 months later, Emma stood in a prestigious Chicago gallery, surrounded by her paintings and a crowd of art lovers who who had come to see her first solo exhibition. Paintings told the story of a year that had changed everything: the storm of controversy, the darkness of betrayal, and ultimately, the light of love that had emerged from chaos. Sebastian watched from across the room, pride radiating from his face as Emma spoke with collectors and critics who were genuinely impressed by her work. The woman who had once worried about affording canvas was now being hailed as one of Chicago's most promising young artists. "She's remarkable," said the gallery owner, joining Sebastian near a painting titled Midnight Collision. "This collection tells such a complete story. You can see her growth as an artist and as a person." "She's always been remarkable," Sebastian replied. "The world just needed a chance to see it." The contract that had brought them together had been formally dissolved months earlier, replaced by something much more valuable: a partnership built on mutual respect, genuine affection, and shared dreams. Victoria Sterling, meanwhile, had quietly left Chicago after the scandal destroyed her social standing. Her manipulation had backfired spectacularly, leaving her isolated and facing potential criminal charges for her illegal activities. The future unveiled as the evening wound down. Sebastian and Emma found themselves alone in the gallery, surrounded by the visual story of their unconventional love affair. "Any regrets?" Sebastian asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind as she studied her favorite piece in the collection. "About which part? Crashing into your car, accepting your crazy proposal, or falling in love with you despite all the reasons why I shouldn't have?" "Any of it. All of it." Emma leaned back against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "Ellie, thing I regret is not trusting what we had sooner. We wasted months pretending it was just business, when we both knew it was so much more," Sebastian said, turning her around to face him. "I have a new proposal for you. One that has nothing to do with contracts or arrangements." He dropped to one knee right there in the gallery, among the paintings that chronicled their journey, and pulled out a ring that caught the light like captured starlight. "Emma Chen, will you marry me?" "Yeah." "Not for publicity or financial gain or any reason except that I can't imagine spending another day without you in my life." Emma looked down at the man who had started as a stranger whose car she had destroyed and had become the love of her life. Around them, the paintings seemed to glow with approval, witnesses to a love story that had overcome deception, survived scandal, and emerged stronger than ever. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, Sebastian Blackwood, I'll marry you." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Emma realized that sometimes the most beautiful love stories began with the most unexpected disasters. She had crashed into Sebastian's life quite literally, but in doing so, she had discovered something more valuable than all his wealth: a love that was real, honest, and absolutely priceless. The gallery lights dimmed around them as they kissed, but the future stretched ahead, bright with possibility and painted in colors. It's more vivid than any canvas could capture. Their midnight collision had become a lifetime commitment, proving that sometimes the best things in life really did come from the most surprising directions. And in the months that followed, as they planned their wedding and built their life together, both Emma and Sebastian would often look back on that rainy night when fate had brought them together in the most unconventional way possible it had been. They both agreed: the most fortunate accident of their lives. Epilogue. 1 year later, the morning sun streamed through the windows of their new home. A converted warehouse that perfectly blended Sebastian's love of modern architecture with Emma's need for creative space. Half the building served as Emma's studio, where she created the art that was gaining national recognition, while the other half provided a warm, welcoming home for their growing family. Rose Chen, now fully recovered and thriving, had moved into the guest suite, claiming she needed to keep an eye on her granddaughter's happiness. In reality, Shu had become Sebastian's unofficial advisor on everything from art appreciation to the perfect recipe for homemade cookies. "She's painting again," Rose announced, finding Sebastian in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. "Third morning this week, she's been up before dawn, working on something new." Sebastian smiled, glancing toward the studio where soft classical music indicated Emma was indeed lost in her creative world. "The gallery wants another exhibition next spring. She's probably feeling inspired." "Or maybe," Rose said with a knowing twinkle in her eye, She's working through some new emotions. Before Sebastian could ask what she meant, Emma appeared in the doorway, paint smudged on her cheek, and a secret smile playing at her lips. "Good morning, my love," Sebastian said, kissing her forehead and gently wiping away the paint. "You're up early again. I had an idea that couldn't wait." Emma accepted the coffee he offered, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "Actually, I had news that couldn't wait." Sebastian and Rose both looked at her expectantly. "We're going to need to convert one of the spare rooms," Emma said, her smile growing wider, "into a nursery." The coffee mug slipped from Sebastian's hands, but he caught it just before it hit the floor, his reflexes apparently still sharp, even in shock. "You're pregnant?" he whispered. "We're pregnant," Emma confirmed, laughing as Sebastian swept her into his arms, spinning her around the kitchen while Rose applauded and wiped happy tears from her eyes, as Sebastian held Emma close. Both of them overwhelmed with joy and possibility, he couldn't help but marvel at how completely their lives had transformed. What had begun as a midnight collision had become a love story, then a marriage, and now the promise of a family. "I love you, Mrs. Blackwood," he murmured against her ear. "I love you too, Mr. Blackwood. Thank you for the most beautiful accident of my life." Outside their windows, Chicago hummed with morning energy, the city where their love story had begun, continuing its eternal dance of possibility and promise, and in their warm, paint-scented kitchen, surrounded by art and love and the promise of new life. Emma and Sebastian Blackwood began planning for a future that was even more beautiful than anything they had dared to imagine. The midnight collision had become a lifetime of love, proving that sometimes fate arrives in the most unexpected packages, wearing the most surprising disguises, and offering gifts more precious than anything money could ever buy.